Welcome to the Battlefield to Blessing podcast. I'm Charl. Thank you for joining us again as we talk about the whole idea of PTSD and the challenges this has on people's lives. We super happy and excited to have Colin with us in the studio today, and we're going to have a chat about the whole idea of mind-body syndrome, the issue of complementary health, and how this affects each of us and our loved ones. Colin, welcome to the Battlefield to Blessing podcast. Great to have you with us.
Thanks, Shaw. I've been listening to the podcast. I'm glad to be part of it.
Great. Yeah. Tell us your business, your health practice. Give us a bit of an idea. Name, what do you do?
It's called Renew Mind Body Health. Because I, for years, was doing things like counseling, studied psychology a long time ago. Never practiced that, but I was doing pastoral counseling. And then went into mission work, and I needed something to help me with some income. So I went and did some training on complementary health practice called integrated body work for people with back pains, neck pains, and things like that. And then I realized that a lot of pain that people are dealing with, especially chronic pain and some illnesses, was actually caused by trauma and unresolved emotional stuff in their lives, stresses.
Goodness me.
Yeah, so it came together.
It sounds quite strange that anybody would not really have the physical pain, as in muscular or broken bone or something, but their senses are still picking up pain. Is that literally what's happening?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's a whole science behind that, how the brain does that. Neural pathways which are formed through trauma, and especially if trauma is accompanied by some kind of injury, then the brain has got the ability to remember that neural pathway, and any triggers that happen afterwards can actually cause the sensation of pain again in the body.
And it starts
very real
again.
Pain. Yeah.
Okay, so we're not even talking about imaginary pain. It really is.
Yeah, pain is pain.
There really is pain. Goodness me. Tell me the kinds of pain that you've come across. I mean, is it debilitating, or is it just something that's irritating, or are there just different levels depending on the trauma?
Yeah, there's different levels of pain, but I'm talking about chronic pain, which means it's been going on for more than 6 months.
And it's
like
almost
sometimes
debilitating.
Many years. Yeah, debilitating.
Even years.
Years and years. Yeah. So it comes and goes, but a lot of the time it's present in the body for a long, long time, permanently. Lower back pain, neck pain, stomach issues, and there's a whole variety of illnesses as well.
Goodness me. And does it come across the sort of the religious, political, socio-political spectrum, or are you finding it more in certain... In other words, do Christians also suffer from this?
Oh, yes, for sure.
Okay.
In fact, out there in the medical field where this has become highlighted with psychologists and practitioners of medicine, they're realizing that, funny enough, and it's not funny, but you know what I mean?
Sure.
Religious people suffer from this a lot because those kind of people want to do the right thing. They put others first, and they sort of fail to take care of themselves properly, if you know what I'm talking about.
Yes. They're serving others.
They feel for others a lot of the time, and they want to do the right thing, so they kind of very often suppress
sometimes
their own emotions,
neglect their own.
That's right.
Their own health too, whether it be mental or physical or whatever.
That's right. Yeah.
Wow. What sort of ideas do you put forward? First let's ask this question, Colin. It must be very difficult to try and tell a client or a patient, that you think this is the issue, that.
Yeah, very often people think I'm saying it's in their head, but it's not in their head.
Yes,
your mind is part of your body, and it can play real tricks on you, and it's a very powerful part of your body. But it's not in your head. Okay, that's real pain, and I want to take that seriously. But to cross over that, sort of take that step and cross over the line to actually suggest this, I need to take seriously whether they've actually had other tests, medical tests. And very often people that come to me, it's the end of the line. They've had enough of this now.
You're the last resort.
Yeah, exactly. So I look at the reports and things like that, take that very seriously. And if I can just share with you quickly how I would help them to make that connection is to look at their pains when those started and what was perhaps happening in their lives during that time or just before that time. And when the clients actually see that, wow, that was when I had a divorce or when that thing happened in my life, that's when it started. And they can make that connection in their mind. That is sort of halfway to healing already.
That's
just that connection.
That's just crazy.
Yeah, to realize that, wow, it's not a physical injury necessarily. Although they usually can connect it with something like I was mowing the lawn or picked up a box and my back went. But your back went because you were already in a state of tension.
Yes.
And that was just a little thing that sent you over the edge.
Yeah.
But what caused that tension that's sitting in your body is the important thing.
Is there a certain age, Colin, that that people are more prone to this, or can it happen at any age? In other words, can children also be traumatized and have the same?
Yeah, for sure.
They can.
With children, there's trauma that happen with children. We call it ACEs. It's adverse or abnormal childhood experiences. Sometimes that comes out later in their lives, in their 20s or even when they're older, as illness or chronic pain. So when they're younger, they don't often feel the effects then physically. Mentally, yes, but physically it comes out later.
Yes, I was quite surprised that somebody that I've known too who was traumatized as a child, and literally the effects seem to only be starting to really bother him in his 40s.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about somebody that's at the top of their game. They lecture to 3,000 people at a time in the industry they're in.
Sure.
We're not talking about, somebody who's just in a manual job somewhere. This guy's, and it's just so interesting to see that gap in the time that you're speaking about now. Colin, when we're dealing with these things, you're dealing with clients or people that come to see you, when they connect it and they realize, well, possibly, hey, this is what's going on here. You say that's 50% of the way to healing. The other 50%, how's that made up?
Okay, so once that connection is made, then the client will realize that that it's not purely physical. The next steps would be, so that's education. Okay, so the first point is always education towards healing with this kind of syndrome. Can I quickly say that the syndrome has been given various names?
Okay.
Simply, it's a mind-body syndrome, but it's also been called, you might come across this and you know what it means, tension myositis syndrome, which is in the muscles, psychophysiological disorders, okay? And that kind of title has been given to it. So it means that we want to get clients back to doing normal things in their life. So if they feel like I can't ever go and climb a mountain anymore because my back is so sore, when they make that connection and they start to feel better, and that happens almost overnight sometimes, the next thing is to actually give them some little things to do, some remedial exercises and things to show them, hey, their body can still work, It's actually been doing what it should be doing all the time.
Does that help them get over a psychological hurdle
exactly.
that then, okay.
Yeah.
It's quite interesting. There was a book written many years ago, probably 30, 40 years ago, called Psycho-Cybernetics by Dr. Maxwell Maltz, who was a plastic surgeon. And people would come to him with major pains or troubles or challenges. And being a plastic surgeon, he would physically correct the ailment. And some people, their change in their personality, their change in the pain threshold, everything would disappear overnight. They'd be healed immediately. And others would come back and say, for instance, if he changed the shape of their nose, it'd say, but you've changed nothing. It's exactly the same. And even showing them before and after photographs meant nothing to them. Yeah. In other words, they couldn't get over this hurdle. It was a psychological problem they had. It was nothing to do with their nose, or the size of their nose. Yeah. Do you find that kind of thing happening in your world from on the psychological sphere where people just can't get over this hurdle, where it's such a struggle that they
definitely
that happens to,
especially when it requires a little bit of thinking and scratching up old wounds, psychologically, and talking about things that happened in the past, traumatic experiences. Some people say it's just too much. I don't want to go that way. And unfortunately, they usually carry on with their physical symptoms.
Yeah.
It's quite sad.
Yeah, that is sad.
But I do understand that it is sometimes too traumatic to bring up.
To get over that hurdle.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me, from a Christian perspective, you spoke earlier about pastoral counseling you did, and the challenges that Christians have because sometimes they actually neglect themselves.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to them?
This might sound funny, but one woman who had been traumatized and was battling with fibromyalgia, which is one of the symptoms, I said to her, you've actually got to get to a point where you say, I don't care anymore.
Oh, my goodness.
Those people that you're trying to help and they're not actually appreciating it, just walk away and say, I don't care. Yeah. Now, I was joking, yes. And she rode away in her car saying, I don't care. But I said to her, you will care. You will care, but you actually need to be able to hand that over to God, those things, and say, look, I can't handle this. It's not I'm not God, And very often Christians will have a kind of a messiah complex where they've got to help everybody. Let that go. Let that go. And sooner or later, God will help you to help people with his strength and not all in your own capacity.
Yeah. And that's very difficult for certain people, that servant heart, and
I know.
And I don't think it's only Christians that have that. There's some people that are just completely obsessed with being a blessing and helping other people, and praise the Lord for that.
Yeah, exactly.
But there are challenges that come with that as well.
You've got to care for yourself.
That's right. You have to.
Yeah.
If you're not healthy and strong, you're not going to be a great help to others later on.
That's right. Even Jesus had to go and take time out.
That's right.
On his own.
Yes.
We need to be able to do that and say no.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah. And that's very difficult for certain people. Some of us get it right first time. We say no to everything.
I'm talking to you about this, but I've been accused of having that kind of complex.
Yes, that's right.
And I've had to realize that and just
Yes. Well, you've also, Colin, dealt a lot with the suffering or the persecuted church. Can you see any relationship there with regards to trauma that people might have gone through? Not necessarily that they got physical pain from it, but the challenges that they have to put up with, the authorities checking up on their homes and following them around, that kind of thing. Does that have an effect also physically eventually on people too?
It will, and it does. So when you are in a situation that's dangerous, your body goes into what's called a fight, flight, or freeze state. And it's a good thing. It's how we were created. So if somebody walks in the room here with a gun, you're going to respond in some way. You might freeze, or you might, because of your training, go into action. And so what your body does is your brain has got the ability then to send out hormones and various things into your body to respond. So your muscles tighten, your heart rate goes up, your adrenaline flows. Veins and arteries are restricted to certain parts of the body, so it allows blood to get to the right parts of the body. Now that happens, and when the danger goes away, your body then goes back into a normal state. But sometimes when you've had issues in your life and it hasn't been resolved, those emotions haven't been resolved, it sits in your body sometimes for years. So your body is in a fight or flight state for many years, which means that there's lack of blood flow to certain parts of your body, for instance, and it can have a long-term effect. So people like that in those areas, they will start, it's sooner or later, having physical symptoms.
Symptoms that are
definitely
that are starting to show.
And that's with PTSD and things like that as well, where it's later on you have people with issues in their bodies, not only pain but real physical effects start to happen where they have to have operations and things like that.
Yes.
It's because their body has just not been released from that that state
Yeah.
can be very bad for you in the long term.
And this sort of state that you're talking of, does it affect other people? I mean, can this affect your marriage or your relationships with others, or is this just a self-perpetuating challenge that you're sitting with?
Yeah, I think anything like this will affect those around you because, for myself, I realized later I was also battling with this kind of stuff. It started to change my character because I was dealing with chronic pain all the time. Started to become less patient with people around me and that kind of thing. Feared certain situations more than I ought to, and I would get back pains. And when I started to learn this stuff myself and make the connections, I found that I could talk myself through those things, and the pain would relieve. Yeah. But it does affect those around you, definitely.
Yes. When you say talk to yourself and talk yourself through this, are you talking about self-talk where you're actually managing it?
Yeah.
I mean, do you literally speak to yourself and say, hey, let me think through this now and work through a plan?
I had a client who came to me and she said that she would get like numbness in her extremities, like her fingers, and her head would go fuzzy and pain sometimes, tingling all over her body that was so disconcerting, She would be driving sometimes and couldn't feel the steering wheel. And I discovered it was a mind-body syndrome. It was because of some of the stuff she had gone through in her life. So I said, okay, the next time you experience this, ask yourself, what have I been thinking about now? What have I been thinking? What's been going through my mind? And what's just happened to me? Where am I going? What's going on? Be aware of your situation. And it happened. She came back and said, wow, you wouldn't believe this. I'm driving on the R300 at night on my own. And I was thinking, what if my car broke down? And I'm stuck here. What's going to happen to me all alone at night? And just before that, she started to get these symptoms. She thought, what did Colin say I must do? She stopped and thought about what she's thinking, what was going through her mind. She realized what was going through her mind. And as she drove, this stuff started to leave her body. It was just that connection with, wow, it makes sense. I was actually fearing, I was anxious about things.
And even although there was nothing to fear at that time.
There was nothing to fear. That's anxiety.
The mind was running on its own accord there. Yeah.
So anxiety is that. That's what it is. Nothing's happened. It's just the fear of something happening.
Or remembering something in the past.
Yeah, it could happen again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And those kinds of challenges with people, they struggle with it. The issue is that the client or the person that's coming to see, for them, this is completely real. This isn't imaginary.
No,
it's not a figment
real
of their imagination. It's something that's really real to them right at that moment.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give somebody with those struggles right now? It could be a young person traumatized when they were young, went through an accident, or a girl that was raped. And now, the anniversary is a very traumatizing day every year for her.
Anniversaries are often things that cause these to come back.
The triggers, that sort of thing. So what advice would you give from a mental perspective now? We're just putting aside the physical exercise and that sort of thing.
First of all, don't try and handle things on your own. Get somebody you can trust to sit down and speak with and share these things. Get it off your mind and into somebody else's ears, that they can bear that load with you. Because very often people can see things and pick up things that you've not noticed in your own experience, patterns and things like that when you talk to them. And secondly, I would say to somebody like that to get into, with some guidance, journaling or writing. That's one of the ways that I help people. So it's called free writing. You make a list of the things that have happened in your life, traumatic events that come to mind, and you just take 15 minutes. You take one of those things and write quickly. Don't worry about the grammar and spelling or even
mistakes.
Your language. If you feel you need to swear about something, let me tell you, just do it. It's you and it's between you and God, and He knows anyway. And you look at the psalmists, they're very honest. Where are you, God? They get angry sometimes. But it's when you do that and you're honest about those emotions, then they can get resolved. So I would say do some free writing, journaling. Get those things out on paper. That's one of the ways I would suggest you start, at least.
Yes.
And see somebody that deals with these kind of things.
Yeah. That's an incredible idea. I thought you were going to tell us that you write down on paper and then burn the book afterwards.
Well, you can. So when you write in, you know, nobody else is going to see this.
Sure.
You can destroy it afterwards.
This is your private conversation.
I get some clients I teach them how to use Microsoft Word or something and encrypt it so nobody else can get into it. There's a password. And you just write there.
Okay, fascinating. Yeah. When we're dealing with friends or family, Colin, who might be struggling with these ideas, and we want to come alongside them. Now, the norm is that they think nobody understands them, and we don't understand them.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. You know, I could. My co-host Dion, I'm not Dion. I didn't understand everything he's been through. He doesn't understand what I've been through, and so we have challenges in our families or with friends or whoever we hang out with, for want of a better idea. How do we play a part in other people's lives in helping them find freedom from pain or from sin or from psychological trauma? I mean, can we do anything besides pray? I mean, is there anything else we can do?
Prayer is important, and it's very often to pray with somebody is really helpful. But I would say listen to people, give them the time of day, you know, to tell their story.
Don't butt in all the time like I do while you're speaking.
Sorry, well, I've lost my train of thought now. No, I'm joking. And to maybe pray that you'll find somebody they can connect with that's had similar experiences. That's so important, you know. In 2 Corinthians, it talks about, you know, how God comforts us so we can comfort others with the same comfort we've experienced from him. So that's pretty important. I mean, if you've gone through a divorce, speaking to somebody who's never had that experience, in the back of your mind, you're thinking they don't get this.
That's right.
But if you're speaking to somebody who has or gone through a battle scenario in the Defense Force, they know what you've gone through. And so you know they understand. So it's helpful to connect people with those folk
that have been through the same ideas.
Very helpful.
And then I think from scriptural teaching, which you've just quoted us now, the idea is that you actually you almost have a duty as a Christian, I would think, to reach out and help people if you've had that experience, you know, and especially if it's an experience that isn't just normal, you know, that you reach out to people that you can see are going through the same thing. And I think some of us are too shy. Some of us wait to be asked. And sometimes we need to just get stuck in, at least offer our services or our ear and listen.
Absolutely. Even if you feel that you're not capable or equipped enough, doesn't matter. You know, what people appreciate is just a listening ear. Somebody who says, "I'm not making light of your symptoms and your experience. I want to take you out for coffee and let's just chat, talk, whatever you want to talk about." You know, and I believe in those situations, if you listen carefully enough, God will give you the connection with that person and the words to say. And sometimes it's not words, but sometimes it is. And he'll give you the right words.
Yeah. And Scripture does actually warn us about that. But it was speaking more in the political sense of being persecuted. But the idea is that we can rely on the work of the Holy Spirit to help us and to give us wording when we need to do that. But as you mentioned before, often when I travel on mission trips and I meet with Christian leaders in Central Africa or Southern and Central Africa, I would think, looking back at it, some of the greatest times of ministry was sitting listening to them chat to me, explaining what they're going through, and me not saying a single word. And that was therapeutic. And it's very difficult for leaders to find
teachers.
Somebody. Yes. And it's also
I see what you're saying.
It's also difficult for them to find somebody that they can trust with the information. You know, so
sometimes it is.
Yeah. So
but as soon as you show that you can be trusted, you know,
yes,
that's part of the healing process.
Sure. Well, very interesting. My friends, you're listening to the Battlefield to Blessing podcast. We're speaking to Colin. We're talking about complementary health and mind-body syndrome. Very, very interesting. Colin's done pastoral counseling before and been in the ministry, and now he's running Renew Mind Body Health.
That's right.
Yeah, fascinating. And you're operating from where, Colin?
From Durbanville area.
Cape Town, South Africa.
Yeah.
People have to fly over here to come see you.
I do a lot of my work online, actually, as well.
Oh, is that so?
I do a lot of coaching, teaching the Bible online, and helping people talk through things. Yeah.
Fascinating. And that's done in an individual capacity or in a group setting, however people need it done?
Usually individual.
Usually
but,
individual.
Sometimes group things are not bad. Yeah.
Sure.
To see that other people have the same issues and experiences.
All right. So I've gone through a traumatic experience. I've only now discovered that my body is playing up, for want of a better word, regarding an issue that happened to me in 1993. It's now 30 years later, and I have a debilitating pain in my lower back. And I'm coming to you on the internet, not physically.
Okay.
Where do we start?
I would want to know what your physical symptoms are, and I want to know what medical help you've had. Okay, that's where to
That's
start.
the starting point.
Because you don't make those connections and say somebody it's a mind-body syndrome. If there's a real pathology happening there, like an injury or whatever it is,
Of
you
course,
want to actually check
yes,
that
that's
out.
right. Yeah.
It might be something more ominous, like a cancer that's growing. You need to have some checks there and go and see your physician, your doctor.
Yes. So it's very integrated. It's not a matter of a standalone idea.
Oh, yeah.
I
Definitely.
understand that.
Definitely.
Yes.
Once that has been looked at and your pain and your chronic pain does not match up with what's happening in your body, there's no tremendous injury that should be causing that. And let me say that you might go for MRIs and come back and the report says you've got an herniated disc at L4-5 or something like that. That to the client very often makes them panic. It sounds terrible.
That is traumatic.
Well, that is pretty normal.
That's trauma
but you
inducing.
don't know that. And very often physicians and doctors don't tell you how normal that is. To you, it sounds terrible, and that actually can make it worse mentally. You think, I've got a degenerative disc disease or something like that. I'll never be able to do something again.
Yeah.
And mentally, that actually is a cycle that makes it worse.
Yes, that makes total sense. I remember as a child, when I was quite young, still a teenager, I broke my collarbone. And I went off to the doctor and he said to me, your collarbone is fractured. And my answer was, oh, well, thank goodness it's not broken.
Yeah. You see how words can make things
exactly.
worse.
Words make a big difference. So I would have got up and walked out there and not bothered with my collarbone that was broken.
Yeah.
Just because of the lingo I didn't understand.
Absolutely. So part of that process then will be, say, looking at the reports and explaining to the client what it actually means, and that these things can heal. Very often they don't think so. I've had bad back issues. I've had an operation in my neck where later on when I discovered this stuff, I had an injury where I could hardly walk. And I went to the doctor and he said to me, whatever you did for your previous injury, it's completely healed, which was a totally dehydrated, flattened disc in my lower back. It's totally healed. Whatever you did for that, without an operation, do it for this issue. And all I did was I had some very minor therapy on my back, hands-on kind of therapy. And I rested, and then I started to do Pilates, which showed me that not only it was strengthening my supporting muscles, but it showed me that I could actually get back to exercise. A little bit later, I was getting like personal best times doing trail running and things like that.
Wow, that's incredible.
I thought it would never happen again.
Yes.
And that was simply by understanding that my body can heal itself, and I need a little bit of help with that process, and understanding that it was not just an injury, it was stuff that was going on in my life as well at the time.
Incredible. Well, just as an aside regarding Pilates, I tried that once, but I couldn't balance on those balls and things. So I was pretty useless at it.
Yeah, I tried that at home. I put my foot through the bedroom window. I thought, gee, this is an expensive exercise.
Yeah, so some of this help can be pretty expensive at the end of the day.
Yeah, but it's a good exercise to do.
Yeah.
To not only physically strengthen supporting muscles for your back, but also to show you that you can get back to exercise.
Yeah. I've got friends that have almost transformed their physical lives, and they believe it's through Pilates, through the strengthening of core muscles and that sort of thing. And they're in their 50s, moving into 60s, and they've said it's really made a massive difference to their lives. Yeah.
Seeing as we're on that subject quickly, let me just say,
Yes.
if you are suffering with an issue, don't go to a big gym class, because I've seen people come from those even worse. I'm talking about a gym Pilates class. Go to something smaller, hands-on, where the practitioner or the teacher actually understands the body.
Yes.
So they can monitor you. And I will even write, for clients, I'll write a letter to those people and say, this is their issue, just watch out for it.
All right.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Don't just go out there and try and keep up with the other.
Yes.
Especially if you're a man, and you go to a class and there's a woman there and you want to keep up with everyone, show how strong you are.
Yes, yes.
And the music's pumping and all that
That's
kind of
right.
stuff.
I was once next to a young girl in a class like that, and I was doing my own thing, and she looked up at me and said, "Why aren't you doing what the rest of us are doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm part of the over 50s club. We do whatever we like."
Yeah, exactly.
So there's a place for all
Don't
of
be
that.
silly, yeah.
Yeah. So, Colin, thank you so much. It's really been fascinating speaking about this topic. At the end of the day, I think we, as you say, we've got to start looking after ourselves, take responsibility for our own health and that, and then use that as a launching pad for action, for the gospel, or for discipleship, or just being a blessing to other people.
Just remember, God created your body. It's a phenomenal part of your creation. And your body is made to be able to heal, given the right help mentally and physically. It can recover from a lot of things, especially chronic pains.
Fantastic. Great. Thank you very much, Colin. I'm Charl, and thank you for listening to Battlefield to Blessing podcast. And remember to keep on fighting the good fight of faith.